Okay, so now it is time to talk about the thing we all fear the most, feedback. So it's a very, very important part of this class is our feedback, critique, general communication about our results. So whether you are receiving or giving it, constructive feedback will make you a better photographer. And it will expand the way you think and the way you are able to articulate your ideas about what makes a photo work or not work. Let's start with receiving critique, because I think that is the one that scares us the most. Remember that whenever you're receiving feedback, it is not a personal attack. That's very easy to say. It's very easy to get defensive, to take things personally, especially when it's something that you've put a lot of yourself into. But remember, whomever is looking at your work and talking about your work, they're doing it out of a want to help you to improve upon your own personal vision. So it's a way to kind of see your work through fresh eyes. You're going to start to notice some patterns of things that you consistently miss or that you consistently don't pay attention to. And by being told these things, you're going to be able to remind yourself of them and kind of move forward. The same kind of goes for the other way. So when you're giving feedback, you're training your eye to know what works compositionally, through light, through the act of storytelling. You're training your eye to spot these things. And then you're training yourself on how to articulate it clearly. By being able to articulate what works or what doesn't work, you're going to be able to think about that in your own work as well. So this will ultimately help you in your own process, both giving and receiving. Now, when you ask for feedback, for the sake of this class, it will be helpful to share your intention. What were you trying to do? Now, there are some times when you'll go and maybe get critique elsewhere, and it might behoove you to not give any context because you want just a blanket response of, well, what do you think about this? But in the context of the class, let's go ahead and talk about what our ideas are and what our motivation was, because that will ultimately help our mentors to give you constructive feedback that's also keeping in mind what you are trying to do. And that will be ultimately better in the course for here. This extra information will guide them to give you advice that will focus in on what it is that you want to work on and you want to get better at. So whether you're giving context or not outside of the class, again, in the class, please give us some context. The important thing is to just be open to what other people say. Now, sometimes you might receive comments that don't really align with your vision or maybe doesn't feel very relevant to what you were trying to do. That's okay. It's very normal. It's happened to me a million times. The important thing is to stay open-minded, okay? And then focus on what was helpful about that critique. Maybe there was nothing, but that's okay too. Just being able to recognize that somebody else's perspective exists will help you to then say, well, okay, but that wasn't what I was trying to do. So how can I make it more clear what I was trying to do? The important thing is to take those pieces of advice that actually are impactful for you and try to then internalize them and move forward. Okay, so remember, the important thing is to remember it's not personal. It's never personal. Just do your best to not get defensive and not to take it personally ever. Now, as far as giving advice, giving feedback, I think one of the things that happens a lot with newer photographers in particular is that you think, well, I'm not experienced enough to critique someone's photo. Now, that's absolute nonsense. You have consumed media your entire life. You know what you like, what you don't like visually. So you have instincts. Just trust your own instincts And remember that every perspective is different. So getting that meaningful new perspective might be exactly what that person needed to hear. So be confident in your own taste level, be confident in your own opinion, and share it. The one thing when giving critique that I am absolutely going to not just encourage you, but implore you, is that feedback needs to be actionable. This goes both in the negative and then the positive. So obviously saying something like, yo, that photo's so sick, man. Like, cool. Like, thank you. But I don't know why it's sick. Like, what makes that photo give you that reaction? Is it you like the light? Do you like the color? Do you like the composition? Do you like the subject? Like, all of these things are more useful than killer tones, you know? That's not really helpful. It's not actionable. It's not something that we can then take into our next photo. The same goes for any more negative critiquing. If you want to give some constructive feedback, make sure it is actionable. It also helps for some people if you do the sandwich method. So you say something good, put the critique in the middle, and then something good at the end. That's kind of couching it a little bit, so you don't feel like you need to do that, but make sure that it is actionable. So let's say you see an image and you just feel like you can't really understand what the subject is. Maybe it's a little bit blurry, like maybe there's a technical problem there. You could say that. You could say, you know, I think what you're going for here has a lot of promise, but I noticed that maybe you missed the focus a little bit. Did you have your aperture too wide? Do you need to kind of stop down a little bit so you can get more focus in there? Was the subject moving? Is your shutter speed too slow? Like, giving those actionable pieces of advice are miles more useful than just saying, yo, it's blurry. Okay, so when talking with your peers and your mentors, just the two things to remember is be open to other people's opinions and to be actionable. Everything should be actionable. Okay, so it should be something the photographer can actually use. All right, now feedback is here to help us grow, so be honest with your opinions, but be constructive. And remember that every perspective has its own worth. Okay, so that's it for this first unit. Your next video will be your assignments. Be sure to read the assignment as well for more clarification. We're going to, in the next unit, we're going to start really getting into the nitty and gritty. So this is kind of like a toe in, and then we're going to move forward. So stay tuned. I'll see you guys in the assignment video, and I really look forward to seeing what you do this week, these next 2 weeks, and hopefully you can join us for a feedback session. All right.